have a James Skalski jersey that I want to get on. Jaren's bought a Jay Valai from Wisconsin one. I want to get a Chad Smith one. There's a lot that goes on. Like, we watch a lot of Clemson clips, but we kind of like, it's really funny just like to rep a Chad Smith jersey. Like, he was in one of the bowl games. He was like the MVP. So like, he's a big deal.
Yeah.
And he's a phenomenal ball player. Makes a lot of great plays. He's not a heady hitter, but he makes plays. I mean, we just love a guy like that. But
Danny Stutzman wearing the, I guess it was custom-made Jimmy Green Beans scout team jersey or Oklahoma jersey, whatever you want to call it. I thought that was pretty cool on Saturday. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios on Campus Corner. Thank you for coming down today, George. We appreciate it.
I'm here every day you're here, Eddie.
Thank you just today particularly. I mean, it's an off day for the Thunder. We're getting our mind right going into game number 2. But
I'll be there, will you?
I don't think I will be. I haven't been invited. I haven't been invited by
I'll save you a seat.
Well, I think it's probably sold out. But you never know. Maybe I'll end up sitting courtside on Wednesday night, 8:30 tip-off.
Yeah, you know people, so
yeah, well, I saw some people were sitting in my seat last weekend, so or I guess on Sunday. A good time to stop down right now for a little bit of more spring game stuff. I know that we talked to Josh yesterday about it a little bit, and it's a really good time to stop down on SoonerScoop.com because the portal is firing up, and right now for YouTube watchers, the YouTube viewer, we got a special offer, $1 for 2 months, promo code OU1. That is $1 for 2 months to SoonerScoop.com, promo code OU1. One of the reasons over the last couple days that you would want to be a member of SoonerScoop.com is George and what you've done here in the transfer portal, and particularly following what Oklahoma has done in the transfer portal. Yesterday, we talked about Oklahoma's addition of Branson Hickman, the center from SMU. And on Monday evening, they got more good news that we had covered at yesterday's portal report that you can see right here on SoonerScoop.com's YouTube page. But Jermaine Lowell, the second of 3 visitors that was in on the weekend, he decides to join the Oklahoma program, and one of 2 expected interior defensive linemen out of the transfer portal, George.
Yeah, big get for Oklahoma, getting Louisville transfer Jermaine Lowell. He's a guy that definitely...
Bring your energy up a little bit today, please.
He's definitely a guy that I think can help Oklahoma a lot.
Yeah.
When you look at his size, 6'3", 315 pounds, a very productive guy. Has played a lot of college football, and I know we'll get into some of the clips here from Brent Venables talking about this defensive line and really not having any experience besides DJ Terry, and he's the only guy that started a collegiate football game. You bring in Jermaine Lowell. He started for Louisville. He played a lot at Arizona State before he battled some injuries. He's a guy that you can count on to come in and play kind of that nose tackle position, maybe even some 3-tech if you needed him to. So big get, and you're right. They're looking for another guy. We'll see who that could be. Sure. I know Dominic Williams is a guy we've talked a lot about. He's visiting Texas as we speak right now. He's supposed to also visit LSU and Missouri, possibly Oregon. So his visit list, kind of goes on, and we'll see how that plays out. Simeon Barrow, another guy from Michigan State that Oklahoma's interested in. He's currently at LSU. So you're hopeful that, maybe a guy like Barrow can come in this weekend. You're hopeful that Williams doesn't commit to Texas in the next couple days. I know Texas and LSU are 2 schools that are kind of desperate for defensive linemen right now. Oklahoma, I wouldn't say is desperate, but they would certainly like to add a second guy. And there's been more guys enter the portal today that maybe Oklahoma looks at. But I think they also feel good about some of these guys that they currently have on roster. They just don't have a ton of experience.
No doubt. We'll talk about some of the guys that Oklahoma does have on the roster, and specifically on the interior, where I think it was a positive day just from a defensive perspective overall. There was questions about what it was going to kind of look like. Zach Alley obviously kind of quote-unquote coaching his first game at Oklahoma. And I think one of the other things that we talked about going into the spring game last Saturday was just like, that there's depth, but is it true depth? Is it real depth? And I think that we walk out of there on Saturday, and we talked about it on the Eskridge Lexus postgame show with Kerry Murdoch. We talked about it on the show yesterday, just in terms of, yes, it does feel real.
Yeah, no, I think that they have more talent they've had on defense in a long time. And not only talent, but experience. I mean, we've talked a ton about Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman, but even guys like an Ethan Downs, who looks like he's playing his best football. You return an R. Mason Thomas, who was banged up last year. PJ Adebawore looks like he's coming along on the defensive line as well. And then you've got your linebackers in Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie, Jaron Canick, who seems like he's fallen behind a little bit, but you still like the potential there. Lewis Carter, Siama Omasiga, we've talked a lot about that. The cornerback room, you bring in a guy like Des Malone, who I think could possibly start. Kenai Walker, you've got some young guys, Makari Vickers, Josiah Wagner. So you really love the depth. I mean, I haven't even mentioned safety, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears-Jennings. So
and some of the young guys, particularly Jaden Hardy and
Michael Boganowski.
Boganowski was excellent on
Reggie
Saturday.
Powers.
Reggie Powers.
So I think that, again, you have some guys that haven't played a lot, but you love the talent in that room, and you're just interested, how are they going to find ways to get – obviously not all these guys are going to go on the field, but I do think they're going to find roles for a lot of these guys to get them some experience next year.
Here is Danny Stutzman, as well as Oklahoma head coach Brent Venables, kind of just giving you a little bit of an overview, as I almost fumbled the microphone, of the defense on Saturday.
What you think of the defense overall today?
It looked very good. Obviously, kept the call, kind of small and just don't put anything out there, but looked really good, man. Some of the guys, the other guys, kind of made a lot of plays. Looked great seeing them. Coach Ali does a phenomenal job just teaching. Every single opportunity he gets. Congratulations to him. Recently engaged, so that was a big deal last night. But and recently really good. The offense was electric out there. A lot of explosive right away. That was the emphasis they wanted to do. Really attack. Take the top off, and they did a phenomenal job doing that.
Again, a year ago, I think one of the keys to the depth of improvement that we made was the competitive depth that we had. Obviously, we've got one guy that has started. A college football game returning interior-wise. And so that's always a little bit concerning. I think the next most reps are around like 98 snaps of our next most snaps from a defensive tackle standpoint. Everywhere else we've got, again, tremendous experience and playmaking, really like where we're at. We've made great improvement in our back seven, particularly at that corner and that safety, developing the depth there. Not just having guys that can go in and play, but play at a high level. I really like what we've done in the spring at corner. I feel great about where we're at, doing the little things better than what we were doing a year ago. But there's no doubt that top to bottom. Particularly at defensive end, at linebacker, safety, and at corner, we've got more guys that can play at a really, really high level. And again, we have great leadership in all those groups as well.
Yeah, we should continue to work on our block destruction, our play recognition, and everything else that goes in between those lines. Coach Al's done a phenomenal job giving us the tools that we need to do. So now it's time for a guy like myself to get those younger guys in here, starting pretty much Monday, enjoy the weekend, and we're right back to the work, man. We know it needs to be done. We've got to outwork every single opponent from here on out.
Zach Alley getting engaged. How about that? Maybe now he can have a press conference.
We should have had a press conference at the engagement. I think
awesome.
that would have been fun.
That would have been great.
And happy birthday to Zach Alley as well. I believe it was today.
Yes,
Tuesday,
that is
April
correct.
23rd. How old is he?
No idea. I haven't talked to him.
All right. Well, fair enough. Maybe we'll ask that. That'll be one of George's first questions for Zach Alley here coming up. No, we've talked about it, though. It was going to be important. And I think that one thing that you looked at for this spring, particularly for Oklahoma, was defensive line, interior defensive line, development of the interior defensive line, and maybe even just overall a defensive line unit that returns a lot of depth at the end positions. But as Brent Venables just said, there is a question mark going in and even maybe coming out of spring, what you're going to have inside. On Saturday, it looked pretty good with Grayson Holton and Devon Sears, though.
Yeah, those are two guys that I would say – I wouldn't say the expectations were super high for either of them. I would say maybe higher for Grayson Holton. I think everybody's like, okay, that's somebody that we've seen flash a couple times the last 2 years now. So I think people expected, hey, can he get himself into the rotation? It certainly looks like he's a guy that could maybe start for Oklahoma. And then Devon Sears. I think some people forgot about Devon Sears.
Right.
He wasn't somebody that was on everybody's radar. He's up to over I think around 300 pounds. He's a guy that I think has been super productive. I think he was one of the guys that, walked home with one of those, most improved guys in the spring. And he's somebody that looks like right now he's clearly in that rotation. So you like those two guys stepping up. We've heard a lot about the two young guys in David Stone and Jaden Jackson. Sure. I anticipate those guys being somewhat in that rotation. You add Jermaine Lowell alongside DJ Terry, the two more experienced guys. Maybe you add one more guy. And then you have to wonder about, Ashton Sanders, Marcus Strong. We haven't heard a ton about those guys, but you wonder, have they developed the way that they want them to? Are they guys that if they bring in another defensive lineman Does one of those guys leave, go in the transfer portal, something like that? And then you mentioned it on the edge. I think you have to feel really good about where you're at the edge. Ethan Downs, one of the more underrated players, I think, on this football team.
Him alongside Kendall Dolby. We mentioned this on the Unofficial 40, I think last week, and we even mentioned it on the postgame podcast as well. But we always talk about everybody else that was returning on this defense. Very rarely does that conversation start with Ethan Downs, and perhaps it should.
Yeah, he's somebody that's
outside of Danny Stutz. Sorry to
Right.
cut you off, but like outside of Danny and Billy Bowman, you just never really talk about the jump. And I remember having this conversation a year ago when the preseason All Big 12 team came out. Ethan Downs was one of the only guys that was on that team. And all of a sudden, it was kind of one of those things. It was like, well, he's not going to be on there at the end of the year. And he might have been one of Oklahoma's best defensive linemen a year ago.
I mean, he was their best defensive end. Certainly their most consistent, was able to stay healthy. I think that's been a huge key for him is he's been able to just stay on the field and play a lot of football. And you can see he's just gotten better every single year. I mean, he was really good in the spring game on Saturday and didn't play a ton. And so I think that if he can be productive, be consistent on the edge, that's huge. And then you look at some of the young guys they've got there. We mentioned PJ. He's really become a guy that they can rely on moving forward. We'll see if he can get a starting role. I think R. Mason Thomas has been obviously a guy that they really like there. I think that if he can stay healthy, he can maybe be their best pass rusher. Trace Ford's a guy we often forget about, and we'll see what his role is on this defense. I could see them using him situationally, but another guy that's just played a lot of football, good leader that you want in your locker room. And so you like the edge. Caden Woolard's a guy we haven't heard a lot about, but somebody that I think will be in that defensive end rotation, somebody that's learning, I think, a lot and was super productive at Miami, Ohio. So you really like those guys. You know, Nigel Smith is probably still a year away. Danny Okoye probably still a year away, but those are guys that, you know, you don't need to rely on them next year. Whereas you need probably David Stone or Jaden Jackson to be a guy next year. You can give Nigel Smith and Danny Okoye a year to develop and then kind of throw them into the fire once, you know, some of these other guys move on.
You know, with Miguel Chavis, and I don't know if you saw the video that he put out this morning out on the recruiting trail. I would imagine when he's going to talk to some of these guys that you have two guys that are kind of polar opposite in terms of how they got to Oklahoma, whether it be Ethan Downs or PJ Adebawore. And I would just imagine like they're kind of the poster childs for kind of what he envisions as, you know, he kind of explains like his coaching style, his recruiting style. You know, Ethan Downs is a guy that we've seen develop rather well here over the last couple weeks. Yeah, couple years.
Yeah, he's a guy that, you know, a few years ago that a lot of people were like, well, you know, he's really raw and like he would make a lot of mistakes, was running past guys and wasn't holding his edge. All of a sudden, he's become their best guy on the edge, and he's very clearly become a leader for this team. I mean, you talk to the guy, and he's very well-spoken, loves his teammates, has stuck it out at OU. And then you mentioned PJ. I think you look at where PJ was a year ago and where he is now, it's night and day. I mean, this is a guy that everybody wanted to see on the field last year. He wasn't ready, and they would play him in certain situations, and he just wasn't somebody that they could rely on. Now all of a sudden it looks like he could be a starter, and that's real development. And you look at his body size; he's put on about 20-something pounds since he's gotten to campus. He wants to add on another 10 this summer. So those are two guys that you're right. When Miguel Chavis goes on the road and is recruiting these guys, he goes, "Hey, look at these two guys and where they've come." You know, PJ in the last year, and think about how much better PJ could be too in a couple years. And Ethan Downs, he's really a guy that has really turned into maybe an NFL type prospect, whereas a couple years ago, I don't think a lot of people would have thought that.
That picture that you retweeted it, but with the four guys that have stuck around, I don't know. It's something that is kind of an oddity right now in college football. Let's hear from them. Ethan Downs, Brent Venables, as well as Danny Stutzman, just talking about the defensive line in general coming out of spring.
It's really good. We've been working really hard this offseason, so to get back on the field, play for the fans, feel that excitement again, hear the music again, all of it is really great.
Man, those defensive ends are scary, man. Those are some dudes all over the place. You know, DT, you know, he's going to be another phenomenal piece for us. It's hard losing a guy like Lacey, but the younger guys are ready to step up, you know, fill in that role. I think we have a really sound squad.
Good. We got to continue to grow, get stronger, bigger, faster. Man, our game's been looking a lot better. What I mean by our games are stunts. We got really good chemistry across the D-line. I've earned their trust, and they look up to me. So a lot of that's going to be on my shoulders as far as how I hold them accountable, how we go into this offseason, our mentality and everything, and how we lead even in our sprints and in our summer workouts, all of it, the D-line taking initiative to step forward, just like we're going to need to be during the season. Big game, it's on the line. D-line's got to step up and make a play. So we're going to have that mentality starting, I think, this Monday. Yeah, after this weekend.
We've had a lot of guys that have gotten better. You mentioned 2 of them, or 3 of them there, and they all have made really great improvement. Devon Sears, I think we gave him the most improved award of the guys up front, inside in particular. But Grayson has made tremendous improvement. PJ and R. Mason, those guys have really gotten better. Ethan is a better player right now than what he was to finish the season. Had a really good all-conference type of season, and then we got some really good young guys that we feel really good about. And some of them are guys that are returning, whether it's a Marcus Strong type of guy, or a David Stone and Jaden Jackson, some other young guys that are into the system. Champ Sanders had an excellent spring along. Again, you mentioned Grayson, and he's really coming into his own. And it's around 290 pounds. I think Stone and Jaden both tipped in over 300 pounds yesterday. And so we got quite a few guys that, again, I expect to make another big jump in the course of the summer. The weight room being in great shape, the strength, our size, all those things. And again, all spring, they had a great spring. Not a good spring. We had a great spring up front.
Yeah, Devon's a phenomenal job, kind of stepping into a bigger role this year, in that defensive line group, kind of young now, but they got all the dudes that we need, to be successful. He's kind of had to step up and be a leader. He's a phenomenal job doing that throughout this get-ready phase.
It's huge because it feels like a game. The scenario, the atmosphere, everything feels way more intense than just a practice. And so the mistakes are more intense. And Coach Chavis, the defensive coach, has done a great job, even during the scrimmage, to show, like, hey, you missed that play. That's a game-losing touchdown. And really make it impactful, make guys emotional and say, this is a spring game. Now, this is going to replicate what it's like in a real game, So trying to replicate all those raw emotions really gets guys fired up, and it's really good for the young guys to see how intense it is and how real it is, like I've learned many times myself. So it's also a great perspective on my part. I've been through those highs and lows, and being able to see that, so I can go to a young guy and comfort him, give a perspective. So man, it's so good. It's so good having a spring game.
PJ had the type of spring that taking that next step for him from a development standpoint?
Absolutely. He's done everything he can. Had banged up here and there, but he's done a phenomenal job this spring. Just been healthy, been going after it, man. That whole defensive line group, just a phenomenal job, man. The veterans have really stepped up. That leadership's been second to none, man. It's great to see Ethan, PJ, R. Mason, the list goes on and on. Just leaders, man.
Coming out of the spring, it seems like, as many times as we heard over the first couple years of Brent's regime in Norman, we heard player-led programs, and specifically when you're talking about the defensive side of the ball, it feels like it's here. It feels like that moment is here.
I think so, and you talk about when you have guys like Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman in the room kind of leading these practices. I think DJ Terry's another guy that's kind of stepped, obviously Ethan Downs. You have it at every level of the defense. Woody Washington out at corner. I think that you see that where they're kind of leading this thing, and Brent can kind of take a step back. That's also Zach Alley coming in and kind of running things too defensively. I think that it's a really right step in the right step in the right direction. And I think that the other thing too is that they have the bodies. Talking about that defensive line, I think going into the spring they had one guy over 300 pounds, and it was DJ Terry up front. They now have Jermaine Lowell, who's 315 pounds. And then he just mentioned David Stone and Jaden Jackson at 300. I think Devon Sears is around 300. Grayson Halton could maybe get up to 300. You add another guy. Now all of a sudden you go from one guy at 300 pounds to maybe 6 guys at 300 pounds.
It's incredible.
That's a defensive line that can compete in the SEC. Sure. So that's what you love to see is not only is it coming in the wave of coaching and players leading that way, but it's also the talent and the bodies that they have on defense are just something that we haven't seen in Norman in a while.
Which in contrast is kind of interesting. You talk about Danny Stutzman and that host of guys that you just listed off as leaders on that side of the football. It was always going to be important for Jackson Arnold to take that next step from a leadership standpoint, as well as certainly on the field. What he did on the field on Saturday, 10 for 20, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, most importantly, 0 interceptions. And I think that is a little bit of a form of growth. Obviously, they didn't ask him to make a lot of hard throws. He didn't have to put the ball in a lot of tight windows. And, specifically because of what they were doing or what they weren't doing defensively with putting pressure on the quarterback. But at the same time, What'd you think of kind of Jackson's just overall day on Saturday?
I thought he was sharp. I think that he went through his progressions, which is something that you wanted to see. He was staying in the pocket, trying to deliver down the field. The offensive line was better than we anticipated, and when they gave him time, he was able to deliver down the field. He had a couple passes that were a little overthrown. The Jaden Gibson one early was a little out of reach, which I still think he maybe could have dove for it. Deion Burks said after the game that he overthrew to him, he definitely could have dove for it. So those are a couple. I think Kenai Walker had a couple nice pass breakups too. So you're going to have some missed throws, but I thought overall he looked really good and clearly had a connection with Deion Burks. And I think it was also a sign of he was running the offense. He was directing people in the right places. So that's what you want to see from Jackson Arnold. He's still going to have some ups and downs. Oh, yeah. But I do think he's going to have a lot more ups than downs, and he's going to show progress throughout the season next year.
Felt like a good jumping off point for what is a critical offseason, and we'll get to that here in a second. Here is Jackson Arnold kind of giving a little bit of an analysis on his performance on Saturday, as well as Brent Venables talking Oklahoma quarterback.
Yeah, I thought I played good. Obviously, there's some plays and some throws I want back, but overall, I thought I was solid. The O-line played great, and just the offense as a whole played great, in my opinion. O-line played great, receivers played great, running backs played great. I'd say my leadership is where I've developed the most. There's a lot of stuff I can say on the field, but I want to say off the field, just kind of getting with these guys and creating a great connection with these guys and kind of building that leadership and stepping into that role.
Yeah, and again, today was another day. And again, I always look at, a body of work. And I'd go all the way back to January and been incredibly pleased with the progress, his leadership, the things that he does from a decision-making standpoint and taking care of the football. Those are the things that I look for. And he's been a great leader as well. Both in our out-of-season program and then once we jumped into spring ball. And again, I expect another, jump during the course of the summer. A lot of player-led things happen in the summertime. And so they've got to do a great job for us to be where we want to be when we come back in August. He's got to do a great job, and everybody. It's not just one person, but he leads the way from being player-driven and getting things done, being efficient and working together.
It's an important offseason coming up for Jackson Arnold. Obviously, it was something that you had asked him, I think, a week ago even, in terms of getting together some of the, dime time retreat, I guess retreats is whatever they're going to call it, over the course of the summer, but certainly working with some of these wide receivers that really missed a whole lot of spring. I mean, we're talking about Jalil Farouk, who got injured on the back half of the spring. We're talking about Nick Anderson, and then continuation of what he did this spring with guys like a Deion Burks, with a Jaden Gibson, a host of guys. And there were so many guys that were out on Saturday, even somebody like maybe a Brennan Thompson who certainly didn't play in the game on Saturday. Yeah,
I think all those guys, it's a big summer to kind of work on that chemistry. You really love the deep ball from Jackson Arnold. I think that's somewhere that that might be his best ball, but it's those out routes, those timing routes, those back shoulder fades, those sort of things that you can really work on in the summer in some of these throwing sessions, and just the timing of those when guys get in and out of their breaks, especially fast guys like Deion Burks. You can tell him and Deion are really on the same page right now, but can he do that with a Nick Anderson who he hasn't thrown the ball to a ton? I obviously you think he can. Andrel Anthony is another guy
one that
we forget about.
You always forget about.
Brennan Thompson working on that deep ball timing, because he's a guy that seems like you always underthrow because he's so fast. But I think that all of those guys spending time this summer going through those route concepts, being on the same page, that's going to be really huge for Jackson Arnold, especially when you talk about some of the big third downs and all of that they're going to face. I think that's going to be huge. The tight ends as well, working on some of those timing things. So it's a huge summer for Jackson Arnold and those receivers, and it does sound like that he's really taking control of being a leader for that group, and obviously setting up those things like the retreats, and also teaching a guy like Michael Hawkins. It sounds like they've kind of connected as well. Casey Thompson, I think, has been a leader in that room and has kind of helped Jackson and Michael Hawkins as well. So it's a huge summer, like Brent said, for those guys, because I think you really saw that with Dylan Gabriel a year ago. Yeah, is he really made that connection with those guys, and you saw it in the way that he played on the field as he took a big jump from year one to year two at Oklahoma. And I think Jackson can take a pretty big leap too if he can make those connections.
A recipient of those deep balls, I think we can probably write in with Penn Deion Burke's name. He was exceptional on Saturday, 5 receptions, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, probably should have had 3.
Yep.
It's debatable. Should he dove, or should it have been a little bit shorter? I don't think Oklahoma fans want that. It was good to see somebody get overthrown a little bit by Jackson Arnold, but overall, as advertised for Deion Burks on Saturday.
I'd say he's even better than advertised. I mean, I think we all thought he would be a really good football player, but this is a guy that has some real juice. I mean, he's somebody that he kind of reminds you a little bit of like Hollywood Brown in terms of his speed, but he's much more physical, can play in the slot.
Much different body style.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's just a ball of muscle, and so I think he's a guy that's going to lead them in receiving next year. And I know Nick Anderson's going to have something to say about that. I think Jaden Gibson could have a say about that. Jalil Farouk, if he's healthy. But I think Deion and his ability to do a lot of different things, you could throw it to him horizontally and he can pick up 15 yards. You could run him deep and get open because he's just that much faster. You're going to be able to do a lot of things where he's going to create some mismatches, and teams are going to have to pick and choose. Do we put our best corner in the slot on this guy, or do you put him out on the outside on a guy like Nick Anderson or Jaden Gibson? So it's going to open up things for other guys too, the way that Deion Burks plays and his speed. And we talked about it. If they can get Andrell Anthony back, Brennan Thompson, you talk about 3 really fast dudes that, again, teams are going to have to pick and choose how they defend that. He's going to create a lot of mismatch problems.
Emmett Jones has put together an exceptional position group, and Deion Burks particularly an incredible personality. Here he is, as well as Jackson Arnold and Brent Venables talking about the Purdue wide receiver transfer.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a great thing, man. It's just like you pay off the work. You see the work pays off and everything like that, man. Just around great people, great team, man. Great offense, great scheme, great calls, honestly. So, man, it's just a great thing to see. Man, it's just all J. Pretty much just want to watch that film, just saying where the spot's at, where the defense is going to probably be open, and just find the green grass and everything like that, man. It's just pretty much we've been watching on film, just trying to put it on tape, and it's just been a great thing to see.
Yeah, Deion's special player. It's one of the fastest kids I've thrown to. He knows how to get open, great route running, and he showed that ability today. I'm super proud of him.
Yeah, probably, again, the best thing that he does is his work ethic. He's tremendous work ethic, and he's wide open when it comes to practice, and just passion for the game, incredibly competitive. And so, again, he helps the guys he's lining up against. He helps the guys that he's lining up next to as well. And so he's been fantastic, great playmaker. He's got tremendous speed and quickness, got great hands, natural feel for the game at receiver and how he fits in, with our offense, and whether it's the drop back pass game or our RPO world. He's really done a great job of learning what to do and transitioning that within our system.
Similar to how it was last year when we relied heavy on Drake. People will start bracketing that inner guy, and that's when defenses start changing and start opening up different things defensively for the offense to run. So having a guy like that is super important because it not only changes what we do, but it changes what the defense does too.
It's going to be a great thing to see come fall, man. You got all different types of skill sets, man. People that's 6'6", you got JG, man, that can go up and get it and stretch the field. You got Nick Anderson, man. He's good at his hips, man. He can go make a play, man. You got so much talent in the room, man, and it's a great thing to see. But, we just trying to keep building and get better.
You're a pretty charismatic guy, it seems. Where do you get that personality from?
I'll say my father, man. Like, I kind of act like him. People say I act like him and stuff like that as well. And just like to talk.
Great investigative journalism there, George.
Hey, man, I wanted to know.
No, he's awesome.
Great touchdown dance.
We looked. Yeah, that was a good touchdown dance.
Best smile on the team.
He said he got it. You think so?
I think he's got the
Are you
best
gonna
smile
put together
on
a
the team.
top 3 ranking of best smiles?
Yeah, I think it's him. Samuel Masigo has a good smile.
That's good.
And I don't know. I can't think of a number.
Well,
3.
that's a top 2. So we'll work on a top 3. How about that? It's
He's
not
a great personality, though.
Awesome personality. Can't wait to talk to him moving forward here over the next, however many years he's going to be in Norman. It's not going to matter, though, if you don't give Jackson Arnold enough time to throw the football. And it was a step in the right direction. It felt like, at least for that first group on Saturday from Bill Beatenbow's offensive line group. But we had heard over the last couple of weeks that as they move Jacob Sexton inside, if nothing else, maybe there's a more comfortable situation for a bunch of those guys. And it certainly seems like Joshua Bates has taken at least a step in terms of what he wasn't maybe giving him, being thrown into the mix with the Troy Everett injury.
I think moving Jacob Sexton to that left guard spot, and we'll see if he stays there. I think he will because he's been playing really well there. Kind of helped Josh Bates because Jacob Sexton is one of their more experienced guys, got a lot of playing time last year, knows what they're asking him to do. Very physical guy, very smart guy. I think that moving him inside maybe helped him, whereas Hito Zeta, who's had a great spring, I think is a little bit obviously more inexperienced, was right there with Bates. So, and then on his right side, Fabichu Wiwu, he's been their best offensive lineman.
He's
so
fantastic.
I think that you look at this offensive line, and I'm not saying they're going to be great by any means, but I do think that it's a group that can be better than what we expected it to be. And you look at left tackle, I think Michael Tarquin has exceeded expectations there. You look at right tackle, Jake Taylor kind of had a rough start to the spring. I think he's done a lot better since then. So much so that maybe Oklahoma doesn't look at taking an offensive tackle in the portal unless the right one comes along. So you like the pieces there. You bring in Branson Hickman, a very experienced center who can maybe kind of be that last piece to kind of put it all together. It's just going to take time. And the offensive line, we've said that before, sometimes it's not till the Texas game, maybe even later, that they kind of have that 5. And I think Bill Bedenbaugh's somebody, he wants to find his best 5 offensive linemen, and I think he's starting to get a little bit closer there. You like the pieces, and I thought they played well on Saturday. And when they gave him time, Jackson delivered down the field. So, and they're going to break down. I know that there's a couple times that they broke down on Saturday, but overall, considering where this thing was at the beginning of spring, I think you have to be somewhat pleased.
Here is Brent Venables talking about his offensive line play through the spring and as well as on Saturday in the red-white.
Yeah, I probably, I was most excited about the improvement from Josh Bates. And there's a whole bunch of guys, but Josh Bates had I just remember where he was, during the season last year and certainly last spring as well. We couldn't get a good snap off and had a great spring and tough guys. He's made tremendous improvement in leadership and effort. Everything goes through him. He touches the ball every snap. So I really liked the things that he was able to do and improve at this spring. Fabichu was another tremendous addition, and he was a leader early on. Great competitor, a natural leader, and had a really, really good spring. Heath Ozida, another inside guy, really strong. We had a bunch of young guys that got, a bunch of quality reps. So whether it was Sosa or Brooks, those guys did a great job this spring. And Garen Hatchett is a young man that obviously we're really counting on and has great experience, has played at a really high level. He can play lots of positions, and he'll be cleared to start working, doing drill work and those types of things, all controlled, but starting in June here shortly, and excited about the leadership that he'll bring. It's hard to lead when you're not able to go through just the simple things like Indy and things like that, but in due time he's he'll be a fixture from a leadership standpoint and bring a lot to the table. But the young guys, Logan Howland, and really excited about the improvement that he made, and again expect him to have another big jump. But Jake Taylor and Jacob Sexton, again, were fantastic all spring. They're all playing their best football right now. Michael Tarquin, Spencer Brown, again, same thing. Mike Tarquin made great improvement from the moment that he got here to where he's at right now. And Spencer's done a really good job. They're mature guys. They've played a lot of football. And so that brings a lot to that group that overall in Oklahoma uniform, we don't have a ton of experience. So those guys have really blended well. And again, chemistry-wise, they've spent a lot of time together. I think the whole line group went to Maui together, did a service trip together to continue to build those relationships. They understand the importance of that. Again, that cohesion there, and they spent a lot of time together. It's they've done a great job from a leadership standpoint and being, again, just taking the initiative to spend the type of time together watching tape and those types of things, getting on the same page.
Very much a work in progress with the offensive line, and it's going to be interesting, as you said, here over the next couple of weeks. Do they add another body? You add Garen Hatchett, who sometimes you forget it was already on campus. It's good that he's been in the meetings and stuff like that, just not been able to get out onto the field. We'll see what kind of depth he were to add to the mix.
Well, I think he gives you a guy that on that interior offensive line, you feel really good about a Heath Ozaida. It sounds like Josh Bates is coming along, but are those guys ready to step in and play immediately? Whereas Garen Hatchett, he played a lot for Washington in kind of a reserve role. He'd come in a lot of different formations. He started a few games for Washington last year going to the national championship. So he's a guy that could come in, maybe doesn't start for you, but if you lose Jacob Sexton for a game or Fabechi Wiwu or a Branson Hickman, like he can play any of those interior spots where he can plug in right away. And sure, he's probably not as talented as those guys, but you can survive with somebody like that. So I think that he helps you depth-wise. Same with, guys at the tackle spot. You wonder about a Spencer Brown. We all thought that he was going to be the plug-and-play guy at right tackle. Sounds like he hasn't had the best spring. We'll see if he can continue to develop. I think you like Logan Halland. He's kind of in that same role as Heath Ozaida and Josh Bates, where you like the development, you like the talent that's there, the potential, just hasn't played a lot. So is he somebody that can maybe be that swing tackle at left and right tackle? So I think you like some of the pieces. If the right guy comes along in the transfer portal, certainly Oklahoma will go after him. Right now, though, other than some guys on the interior, there haven't been a ton of guys that I think Oklahoma would be interested in. There's just not a ton of talent right now, especially at the tackle spot.
Now that we're a couple days away, last thing from us before we get out of here today, any extra thoughts or ideas, theories, conspiracies as far as the running back situation with Javonte Barnes?
Not that I know of.
You almost got to take him for their word now.
Yeah, and I think that if he were to go in the portal, and I could be wrong with this, he could go in, sometime before April 30th. I think we would have seen it by now. I think there was a lot of people that thought, he'll just go in the portal on Sunday, but I don't get
Seemed
that
like everybody
sense.
was on board with kind of what was being done there on Saturday.
And maybe he was a little bit nicked up, and they're just like, let's not risk it. He's still coming back from the other injury and all that, so maybe that was just one of those things, but I don't think so. And again, kind of like offensive tackle, I don't think Oklahoma's really going to be looking unless the exact right perfect guy jumps in the portal. So I don't know if that guy's out there right now. It doesn't seem like it, but
Colorado's Dylan Edwards entered.
I know, and Oklahoma recruited him obviously very closely, so maybe he's somebody they would get involved with. I know Kansas State.
It's going to have to be a very specific operation, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it has to be somebody that they really, really love for them to do that. Same with corner. I know I mentioned corner yesterday on the Portal Show.
Yeah.
Has to be somebody they absolutely fall in love with, and it has to work out. But right now, I think the number one priority is getting another defensive tackle, and obviously we've said some of those names that they've not only are interested in but have been in contact with.
And if you don't know them yet, check out the Portal Show with Josh McQuishan. We covered that aplenty. All right, that's gonna do it. That's Oklahoma spring ball. It's almost like I guess kind of the next cornerstone or milestone or whatever you want to call it. July 1, as it was announced on Saturday at the Oklahoma spring game. There's going to be a big extravaganza for the SEC. I guess arrival, if you will, which already feels like it's already happened in a way because we went to SEC Media Day and all that kind of stuff, but that's right around the corner.
Yeah, you've got that coming up. You've got SEC Media Days out there in middle of July, I think July 15th through the 18th. You've got SEC spring meetings, which are coming up in May.
Which should be interesting. If nothing else, it's something new that Oklahoma's going to be involved in, which is a good opportunity to talk to a number of people.
Well, and I think at that meeting too, we could find out stuff about future schedules, not only for football, but I think basketball. That could happen. You've got baseball and softball going on. I wonder if they start releasing some of those schedules, or at least who they might play. In 2024 and 2025. So those meetings are definitely ones to keep an eye on. I think it's May 28th through the 30th out there in Destin, Florida. So that's certainly something I think is kind of the next thing for at least to pay attention to, other than the portal.
Well, have a good trip.
Where am I going?
Oh, my bad. I didn't know if you want to. George is headed up to New York City to protest with the Columbia University students, or so I was told. Is that inaccurate?
Let's just end the show here, Eddie.
Are you getting red?
That's false. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's going to do it from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Thanks again for joining us here on the SoonerScoop.com. This spring, I guess, kind of wrap up as we kind of close the book on what was the Red-White 2024 game. Until next time, George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you there.